The residential real estate contract in Florida is being used a lot right now, and you need to know what you're signing when it comes to hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. I know it sounds boring, but I really want and need to run through the Florida Realtors Florida Bar contract with you. It's also known as the FAR Bar, and it is the most widely used residential real estate contract in the state of Florida, including all along the Emerald Coast, where I sell residential real estate in Destin, Florida. Just to give you a heads up, when I started in real estate about 13 years ago, the contract had 9 pages. Today, we are pushing almost 15. We're on that 14th page. So it keeps changing. They keep adding to it. I keep educating myself on it, but you need to be educated as well. I'm not gonna dive too deep into the contract. I promise to keep it as interesting as possible, and I might even share some of the anecdotes that happened throughout my career along the way. To start, please know that Florida Realtors has 3 contracts to choose from. They have the Florida Realtors Florida Bar, known as FAR Bar, standard contract, and as-is contract. And then there's the Florida Realtors contract for sale and purchase, known as the CRISP. I'm talking about the FAR Bar today. It is the one that I use the most, and like I said earlier, most other agents in our area use it as well. This document is a contract between a buyer and a seller determining price and terms for the sale or purchase of a property. Like I said, it is determining price and terms, both of them, not just price. And there's 14 pages of terms here. There are addenda that can be added to the offer or contract depending on what's going on with the purchase. I am not going to go into detail about those, but please know this. The language in the addendum has the ability to override the original terms of the agreement. Any addendums that are attached can be very powerful. This is because they will override the language that was in the contract before the addendum was attached. Know what you're signing in a contract and know what addendum you have attached to your contract. Okay, I am going to quickly run through each page of the contract. I know that sounds like a lot, but like I said, I'm not going into great detail. I'm just gonna hit the points that you really need to know and understand. You need to know and understand the whole thing, but I'm giving you like the highlighted moments of the contract. On the first page, you have 5 things. You have parties, property description, purchase price, time for acceptance, closing date. And what that means is you have the buyer and the seller, you have the property described in great detail. It's the address, the parcel ID number, and the legal description of the property. It does go into personal property versus excluded items that might be attached. That's something to pay attention to because that does change a lot. If there is personal property being added to a contract, it needs to be listed on the first page where it talks about adding personal property. If there is a loan, the lender is not going to count that as a valued item to the purchase price. You get 0 value for that. If you're doing a cash deal, you don't have to worry about it. If there's something that is attached to the house that is being excluded, that is the same place. That would go. Then you have your purchase price, what you're putting in for earnest money. We will be doing a video on earnest money soon. There is a place to put in a title company, and this is only for where that earnest money is going to be held in escrow until the property closes. This is not determining the title company. So please know and understand that. Also in this area, you're going to, if you're getting a loan, how much of a loan are you getting and how much are you putting down? Those pieces will go in there as well. Time for acceptance means you're making an offer and you're gonna give the seller however many days to respond to that offer. That goes on that page. That is an important timeline in the contract. If it's not met, that offer is null and void. And then you also have the closing date, which is always negotiable, but the buyer usually goes in with a designated closing date, and then it could be negotiated from there. Okay, on page 2, the 2 most important things are assignability and financing. On assignability, what that means is Is this contract assignable to anybody else? If there's a loan attached, no. The answer is no, no, no. If it's cash, I always mark that it can be assigned to another party, but the original party cannot be let out of being liable or responsible for this contract. And then it comes to financing, and it does go into detail about financing. So I'm just gonna go over a couple key parts of that. In the financing part, it wants you to specify how many days you have for that loan commitment or loan approval. The standard is 30 days. It talks about what type of loan you're getting, conventional versus FHA versus VA. What is your interest rate gonna be, and so forth. It does talk about the loan commitment period also, and goes into detail on terms and lenders, being able to approve buyer or not. I'm not going to go into great detail about that here, but one thing that you do need to know is in today's market, sellers do not want to see that space, that area filled in too much, because it narrows in the type of loan that the buyer can get. They want to see it a little bit more broad. I used to always fill it into a T, and now I just leave it blank. We've got 30 days to get a loan, and the rest is blank. Okay, now we're on page 3, which the most important thing on page 3 is the determination of buyer's closing costs versus seller's closing costs, and that does kind of feed over into page 4, but we're just gonna talk about it on page 3 for now. It does specify who pays what when it comes to closing costs, which are again, always negotiable, and it does talk about repair limit regarding warranted item repairs or wood destroying organism repairs, and also permits. And what that means is if there are any open permits on the house, there's a line item for that to be corrected. And what we have here is the seller and the buyer are going to negotiate a price or an amount that the seller is willing to pay when it comes to those items. Now, warranted items are different from cosmetic items, and I will go over that on a different page. So again, in a normal market, that's negotiated. In today's market, we're really capping out at really low numbers on those for buyers, if any at all. Page 4, 2 most important things are title evidence and special assessments. On the title evidence, this timeline is held there for the title company to get a title commitment determination to the buyer by a specified time, and it is just showing clear title of the property. If that timeline is not met, the buyer can cancel the contract and get their earnest money back. It can happen, it has happened, it is a time frame that I personally pay close attention to, and I make sure, whether I have the buyer or the seller, that that buyer is getting that title evidence by that time frame, and I make sure to get receipt of that. Next, special assessments. So important, especially if you live in an area where there are a lot of condos. I do, or a lot of associations through neighborhoods. Again, I do. I had a huge special assessment last year on a condo. It was like $80,000 to $90,000. We had to negotiate that during, going under contract. Who was gonna pay for what before closing? Who was gonna pay for what after closing? It took a lot. We got it negotiated down. But again, on the contract, you need to specify who's paying for what. Is the seller gonna pay for the whole assessment prior to, or is the buyer gonna be responsible for part of it after they close? Page 5, it's a lot of disclosures. Have your agent go through that with you. Page 6 is super important. It's all about the property inspection and repair, and those repair limits and wood destroying organism limits and the permit limits that we talked about come into play on page 6. It carries over into page 7, and it really just goes into great detail determining what that means and what the seller is actually responsible for. This is a great page to go over with buyer and seller so that they know going in what is a general repair item or warranted item, whatever you want to call it, versus a cosmetic item. What is the seller responsible for when it comes to closing out permits? And what is the seller responsible for when it comes to wood destroying organism inspections should anything turn up on them? Very important page. Read through it thoroughly. Make note of those specific items. Page 8, it's talking about liability and dispute resolution. Go through that with your agent. Do not miss that part. Okay, pages 9 through 12 are the standards for a real estate transaction. There's a lot of information in there and a lot of things that you as buyer and seller need to know. Go through these pages with your agent. Read through it ahead of time, ask them questions, have them sit down and read through it with you. Either way, go through these pages. Page 13, This is where you put that addenda if there is any. There's additional terms to add stuff to the contract yourself. Adding stuff to additional terms can get a little tricky because we as agents are not supposed to try to be attorneys. So be very careful what wording you put there. Consult with an attorney. Don't get too crazy in that section. Keep it very specific, and you don't want to put something in there that could be left to interpretation should something happen. Finally, we made it to page 14. On the last page is where buyer and seller sign and date, and if there is a listing broker is determined there, and if there's a cooperating broker is determined there, and that is for the sole purpose of saying that these are the only people getting paid a commission on this deal. We are not, as a broker, brokerage, agent, whatever you want to call us, we are not a part of this contract. We are not a part of this deal. We are only here to facilitate it. Selling Destin Florida real estate along the beautiful beaches of the Emerald Coast is fun and fulfilling most of the time. However, during the process of buying and selling a home, there are some things that need to be taken seriously, and writing a good offer, getting it to a contract is one of the most important things. Read through it, ask questions, and know what you are signing. I promise you, if you do those things, it could save potential heartache through the whole process of closing. Please watch through some of our other videos and playlists for all things Destin Florida real estate and so much more along the Emerald Coast.